is going to talk to us first, and John is the field director for the Arizona Democratic Party. It's his job to get us all mobilized, trained, and out there gathering in votes. So we want to be sure and listen to him because the theme is how to win in 2018. Woohoo! Yeah. All right. Our second speaker, I'm just going to say who everybody is. Our second speaker is Sue Kastner, who is a vice chairwoman of the Arizona Democratic Party. This is an elected position, elected within the party at our every 2 years meetings, and it's a very responsible position, and she is here to make us want to work hard and to win in 2018. And finally, we have an expert in voter suppression and voter integrity. He's a lawyer. He's a lawyer that works with voter integrity for every election, and his name is Mark Robert Gordon. And I'm so proud of myself, I remembered all the names. John Sutton, the field director of the Arizona Democratic Party.
I'm gonna try and speak up. Can someone tell me if they can't hear me? I talk to microphones and I keep yelling, and then it just gets like increasingly loud. So can everyone at the back hear me okay? Perfect. My name is John Sutton. I'm the field director of the Arizona Democratic Party. Really excited to be here. Thank you, Harriet. Wanted to come here to talk about what the state party is doing to win elections, and then more broadly, how we win elections. Now, first off, I can talk for like 6 hours on how to do that and what we're doing, but I won't do that. I've got some important things to say. I know Sue does as well. And then we'd like to take any questions or comments you might have, because I feel it'd be such a shame to come up here and not hear from the people who live here, work within the party, or don't. We like everybody every day. But it would be a shame for us to come up here and not hear from you all what you guys are hearing and feeling and seeing on the ground. So we're excited to have that opportunity as well. So at the state party, I worked here in 2016. I moved here in March of 2016 from Indiana, home with Mike Pence. We can save our booze. I'd worked there for several years, and I decided to come here because I was looking for something new. I decided Arizona was that state that's kind of really close, and you can feel it about to tip over the edge and become a really, really competitive state. So I moved here in March of last year to work for Anthony Patrick and all the great candidates we had running last year. And little did I know we'd sort of become the epicenter of the political universe last year, and even more so this year and looking forward. Every day I talk to someone here, there, or otherwhere that tells me, John, the path to the U.S. Senate runs through Arizona. I say, I know. John, the path to a majority in the U.S. House of Representatives runs through Arizona. I say, I know. Please give me money. They often don't like that part. We're so very close to tying our state Senate. We almost did last year. We're making great inroads in the state house, and we're winning important elections like Flagstaff mayor. And so there's so much good happening in this state. My job, my role, my focus at the state party is how do we take all of this fantastic energy right now that came out of everything bad that happened on November 8th and push it forward in a productive way that builds power to win elections. And now the first thing I'll say to all of this is there is not one answer. If anyone tells you that they alone have the right answer, they're lying to you, and you should stop talking to them. I frequently ask people to tell me things that I think might be wrong, but I'd like to hear them out. Because politics is the art of relationships, and I can't determine what's going to impact someone else's vote as much as any of us can. So it's great to get in communities like this and learn what's working, what isn't. I'm going to tell you what we're thinking about here at the state party, what we want to do. And I hope you like a lot of it, because a lot of it centers around helping local party organizations. Since I got back to the state party, we've started a new emphasis on what we're calling a 15-county organizing strategy. For those of you who were excited and engaged in 2004, I am a Howard Dean Democrat, 50-state strategy, 15-county strategy. We're going to compete in every part of Arizona because as we see, when we do, we can win some elections. In 2016, we had the largest coordinated campaign the state's ever seen. Don't say it was perfect. I'm sure there are perhaps gripes here, there, and everywhere about what happened. But what we did see was Democratic turnout, depending on where you look, rose 3 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 10%. Those are big numbers. That is what field and what personal conversations can do. So what we're doing is investing in local parties, local legislative district parties, local county parties, to make sure they have the resources they need to succeed. So we're doing a couple things. Some of this is a little bit of a sneak peek to some stuff we're going to be rolling out at state committee, which is this Saturday in Clark County. Just a spoiler. One of the big things we're doing is we're investing $50,000 into local county parties to give them the resources they need to organize in their local communities. Coconino has different needs than Navajo, has different needs than Maricopa. Those are all very different organizations, and we recognize as the state party that while we can't raise as much money as, say, the DNC can, we have a full-time staff, and we have different things we can do to help raise money. And if we don't push that down to local parties that are doing the hard work every single day, organizing events like this, then we're not doing the right thing. So one of the things we're focusing on is that $50,000 grant program. We're hoping to have that wrapped up pretty soon and have that money impacting local Democratic organizations in every single county across the state. So that's sort of one pillar of what 15 county organizing strategy needs to be. Another is providing resources for training for local counties and LDs. So one thing we're going to announce pretty soon is a really broad training academy. For years and years and years, in every state that I've ever seen, there is a training program, but it's pretty much how to use Vote Builder. Like, that's it. Have a couple webinars, maybe an in-person training or two. That's it. We are completely dispelling that notion that that's all campaigns are. We're developing an overarching academy program that will train people in communications, field, finance, how to do things digitally, so how to actually use Facebook to win elections and things like that. What we're trying to do is offer best practices, offer templates, offer different things that can reduce the barrier for everyone to get engaged in their local county, local LD. Because as we've seen, if we provide materials that give someone just that little bit of head start, they'll become more engaged. And everyone, most of the people here, I should say, are volunteers. You all have normal 9-to-5 jobs. You're finding times outside of work, family, friends, to get involved in the Coconino County Democratic Party. We want to reduce the barrier and make it easier for people, working within the party, people new to the party, to come to the party and do really cool things and help move this county forward. So that's the second thing we're doing. And then the third thing we're doing is we're preparing for 2018. As I mentioned, November 8th, 2016. Was one of the worst days of my life. I can safely say that. I remember texting my girlfriend at 5 or 6 in the morning. I texted her, "This is gonna be an amazing day. Like, I can't wait for 6 or 7 o'clock when the polls close." That all changed. But I know a lot of us, probably many people in this room, sort of feel doubled down on the need for why we're doing what we're doing. Right now in Washington, Republicans are debating taking healthcare away from 32 million people, and from the people who can miraculously keep it, raising their premiums, reducing the quality of their care. So if there's ever a question on is what we're doing important, I can't think of a more impactful example than what we're seeing right now. So we're seeing just a tremendous swell of grassroots activism. I'm sure you're seeing it here. We're seeing it in Phoenix. We're seeing it all across this state. I don't care how big or how small the city is. So we have a really important task if we want to win elections next year, because that's what this is about. We need to keep that going. We can't let people get tired. We can't let people think that just because they protested outside of John McCain's office a couple times in June, that's all the work they need to do. So we're building connections with these local groups. I talked to the leaders of some indivisible groups. Sometimes it feels like too frequently, especially right now when we're working together to do some really cool and important things on the Affordable Care Act and working to protect it. So we're building these connections. We're trying to lay the groundwork and really prime the pump for a successful 2018. And then when next year rolls around, we're going to be out across this state and we're going to have a local hiring plan that makes sure that when we're hiring people to work for the Democratic Party, just like we did last year, we'll hire them from their local communities. This is going to be a neighbor organizing a neighbor, where possible. It's not going to be possible everywhere. Sometimes those campaign hours are a little too much for people. But we're going to be hiring people from within their local communities. Because when someone from Flagstaff is organizing a neighbor from Flagstaff, when someone from Yuma is organizing a neighbor from Yuma, that's when we see two things happen. One, that's when we see more people vote, and that's all good and well, and that's how we win elections. But more importantly, that's how we see long-term growth in the strength of local party organizations. The director of operations at the county party is an intern from the 2016 campaign cycle. She's now, doing different things. And so that's how we build longer term growth. we need to continually reinvest in local party organizations. So whether that's money, whether that's training, whether that's after the 2018 cycle, well-trained staff to plug into roles and help people move this county forward continually, that's what we want to focus on. I want to turn and keep turning the Arizona Democratic Party into what I call a member services organization. For those of us in this room who are involved in the Coconino County Democratic Party, you are members, full-fledged card-carrying of the Arizona Democratic Party. We need to be serving you all. We need to be giving you the resources and the things you need to be successful. So that's what we're doubling down on. To their full credit, that is what the DNC is doubling down on. The DNC is making massive efforts to reinvest into the local state parties, and we're going to hopefully push that down to you all. I feel great because, as I mentioned, I'm a Howard Dean Democrat. I feel like it's 2004 all over again. I feel the optimism, and I feel like we can win some elections. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of hard work, and we're definitely going to lose some elections along the way. But I know at the Arizona Democratic Party, we're tremendously excited. We want to organize in every corner of Arizona. We're starting to do that now. We're going to continue to ramp that up as we look ahead toward next year. And then outside of that, we're really looking forward to working with existing party apparatuses like the Coconino County Democratic Party to see what we can do to be a value add to what they're already doing. We don't want to come and reinvent the wheel. We don't want to come and tell people what to do. I gave my cards to a lot of people today that said if someone ever does come tell you what to do, give me a call and we can fix that. But we want to be a value add. Because what I realized, and I think a lot of people at the state party realize, is that, you people, everyone here are the people who win elections. Yeah. The people who are involved day in, day out, whether there's an election tomorrow or not, are the people who build long-term party strength. So that is who we need to empower. That is who we need to give resources to. I'm excited to be in a position to help a state party to do that. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight at the DNC also. So give us time, believe in us just a little bit, and we hope that we'll repay that belief in spades by giving you all the resources you need to be successful, by helping you win some elections, by helping you retain important seats that you've already won, by winning LD6, doing all these very, very important things. Flagstaff is a crucial linchpin in how we win statewide. When we run up turnout in Flagstaff, that doesn't win alone statewide, but I look at spreadsheets all day, every day. That gets us a whole lot closer. So with that, I want to kind of stop right there because I want to introduce my good friend Sue Kastner, and then I think after that we'll both take questions that you might have or not have about what we can be doing, what we should be doing, what you think we should be doing. So with that, Sue Kastner.
I grew up in New Jersey, so I can yell too. If you want to, yeah, you can hear me. I usually try to start with some fun, feel-good stuff, and I have talking points because it wouldn't be political if I didn't have talking points. But a total of 6 GOP-held state legislature seats have been flipped since November, so we should celebrate that. That's a little bit of resistance, and I think that's a tale of things that are going to come. The California State Assembly passed a bill that would require all presidential candidates to release tax returns prior to being placed on the state ballot. So I think that's kind of important, even though the other side of the aisle is saying nobody cares about that. Congress has unanimously passed a resolution condemning white supremacists. Again, something that nobody seems to care about, but Congress passed it, so we're good with that. Senators Kirsten Gillibrand and Susan Collins have introduced a bipartisan amendment that would reverse Trump's ban on transgendered individuals. And Don just reminded me that it's co-sponsored by McCain. I'm glad that he's doing it. He said it's more like he's not standing in their way, so yes, he's helping, but not really. Hillary Clinton had pizza delivered to all the people who were sitting in the streets waiting for her book signing to happen, which is great. Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins just had a contract signed that makes her the highest paid female director ever. I don't know how many of you saw the Emmys, if you got to watch that. Stephen Colbert said that had these people given Donald Trump an Emmy, he might not be president. He would have been happier. Melissa McCarthy got an Emmy for being Sean Spicer. Alec Baldwin got an Emmy. We know who he was. And Kate McKinnon got an Emmy for being Hillary. So good for them. Vietnamese American Kim Hong donated $5 million to Hurricane Harvey relief.
Who did? Say that again, please.
Vietnamese American Kyo Hong He came to the United States. He was paid, I think, $125 an hour for his first job in 1975. He founded a company which is now worth $14 billion. So those are immigrants. And if you ever need a really good laugh, just for fun, Google Vicente Fox. If you've seen some of his videos, absolutely fabulous. So I am here. I said years ago that if I ever ran for anything, it would be the border. But Donald Trump did get me to run for an office, and I am the vice chair, one of the vice chairs of the party. When I ran, I said that I would go to every county, caucus, club, or legislative district that would have me. And this gentleman here has been sending me all over the state, from Nogales to Sedona to wherever, anybody that would have me. I've also been carpooling with the gentleman in the back, Mark Robert Gordon, who talks about voter protection. I don't get paid by the mile, but the things that I have been doing is what John just talked about. We don't go and tell you what you need to do. It was basically a listening tour, and what I have said is it's the Big Ideas and Bald Tires tour, and a lot of the things that I went and listened to. I think I was up here in February with Harriet and the crew, and a lot of the things that I came back with, John is now implementing at the state party level. I was told, we need help with social media, with maintaining a mailing list, with training people, and those things are now being implemented. And I think it's great. It's like we are listening and we need ideas from you. If you can call John, you can email me. I know he's been giving out business cards, but essentially my email address is webelieve2020@gmail.com. It should have been webelieve2018. I apologize for that, but webelieve2020. If ever you have an idea, a question, anything, please email me and let me know. What I have learned, I was on Hillary's National Finance Committee. I was in New York on election day. I was in the fetal position for quite some time after that. But what I have figured out and what we were told is we have to meet people where they are. And I might get kicked for this, but not all Republicans are evil or crazy. I live in the Great White North of North Scottsdale, and I always wore my Hillary gear wherever I went. The health club up there, before election day, people would sort of spit on me when I had my Hillary t-shirts on. Now it's kind of interesting because I wear the same shirts and people walk up to me and go, "Oh my God, thank you for wearing that." These were the same people who before looked at me like I was crazy. And now they come up to me and say, "What are we going to do?" Now we're in a partnership. What are we going to do? Right after the election, I live in a cul-de-sac, and we'd go out there and all of our dogs play together. People came up to me, especially women, and said, "I voted for him, but I never thought he'd win." So it was a protest vote. I know. It was a protest vote. They hated her. They never thought he'd win, and now they're stuck with him. But we play with our dogs out in the street, and I thought about that as how do we find common ground? And I told him one of the first things that he did was he took down all the animal cruelty reports from the USDA website. Why would he do that? Because he could. What does that mean to them? That means that you cannot find a puppy mill anymore and what they've done or how many reports they've had filed against them. You can't find animal testing laboratories and what they've done. You can't find a zoo and how many reports have been filed against them. So what I've tried to do, and again, I think my precinct, I think in the United States is the highest in terms of donations to Donald Trump in the country. Wow. It's a great precinct. I try to find what appeals to them. The fact that they took down the LGBT site from the Department of Labor right after they did that. They took down the Spanish language version from the White House. And you try to figure out what is going to reach that person, Republican, Democrat, or Independent. We have now more independents registered than anything else. So you have to do that in terms of how are we going to get, especially in Arizona, we've got to be able to reach moderates in terms of being able to win. So that's one thing that I have been focused on and trying to do, especially in my own neighborhood. During the primary, I went out and my claim to fame with the Hillary campaign was I knocked on every door of the Democrats that had not turned their ballots in or voted, and everybody thought that was amazing. Unfortunately, that was 18 doors. I didn't tell them that because they thought they were really impressed with that fact. But if I could leave you with just one thought is, everybody, if they've got a positive IQ, there's something that 45, and I don't usually say his name, but 45 has done that is going to offend them. And you need to find what that is and appeal to their common sense and their better nature. You might not get them to come over and vote, but just plant that seed and try to figure out, because he's just beginning. I mean, every time he opens his mouth, it's just talk at the UN and talk about his building across the street. You just gotta go, ah. I have a nephew who's a Marine in Okinawa. He's a gunnery sergeant. And every time he talks about obliterating the North Korea, I fear for his life. Yeah. So you look at these people, look at what is of value to them, and try to find common ground. I think that the state party is going to do amazing things. As I said, when John sends me on the road, I keep asking him if I'm going to win the toaster oven because of all the places that I've gone. The one that was most emotional to me, I went to Santa Cruz County, and I went up and I touched the wall. If you want to, and I'm going to get emotional about it, but if you want to be motivated, from Flagstaff it's a bit of a haul, but go and do that. And every time I get tired and say I don't want to do it again, that's what I do. I don't know if you want to take questions now or if you want Mr. Voter Protection to talk first.
I think let him go ahead and talk, because they might want to ask him questions as well.
Yeah, voter protection and voter suppression. I think we have a county recorder in Maricopa now because of the colossal screw-ups of the last. I know that you've got a county recorder up here who's absolutely phenomenal, but Maricopa had some pretty screwed up things between Arpaio and Purcell. So we've got Mark Robert Gordon who will talk to you about voter protection and how important it's going to be in the coming year.
I just want to preface his talk is you realize if we had honest elections and we didn't have gerrymandering and everyone who was eligible could in fact vote, the whole system would look differently. Gradually the rules have been changed on us and the districts have been changed on us. It's happened like the frog in the pot of water, and now the water is boiling. And now I introduce you, and thank you for talking about voter suppression.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hello, Coconino.
Hey,
Hey, you can let the apple pie beat you. Come on. Hello, Coconino.
hello.
There we go. Some spirit. Good. So, look, we're not going to win elections if we don't get people out to vote. Not just people in this room. We need to get people everywhere out to vote.
Yep.
We got to have our enthusiasm carry over into the streets. We've talked about this before, but it has to happen this time. It has to. Or we're going to get the same types of people, and it doesn't matter, it's not a partisan issue. We're going to get the same types of people that want to stand in the way of democracy, elected to office, no matter what their viewpoint is. They certainly should not get in the way of people's right to vote. Right?
Yes.
But we can't do that if we don't do our job motivating people who aren't motivated already by everything that's going on in the news. I don't know what else it's going to take, but it certainly takes everyone that came out today for lunch in this room to get out and call everybody on your list and tell them this is a must. This isn't a casual affair. Democracy is not about being complacent. It's about being active. It's about being a part of the system and part of the solution. You don't like something? You stand up for it. So I want to talk about what I've been out talking about for a few years. I am the co-chair of the Arizona Democratic Law Professionals Association. That was a group put together by Felicia Rodolini, two-time nominee for Attorney General, as a group that cares about legal issues affecting policies that we care about. and trying to activate that group. So I'm the co-chair of that organization. I'm also the Maricopa County Democratic Party's election integrity chair. And I am the one who, with our county chair, whoever that is at the time, credentials the people that go in and watch what happens during elections. We send our attorneys to court if there's a problem. And I've been going out more recently and more frequently than I have in the past outside of Maricopa County, trying to get the message out about what happened here in 2016. And to give a little bit of an introduction so you understand the issue, a very verbose explanation of it, but so that you have the understanding of it and then can condense it. So that when you're going out and talking to people and you're talking about voting rights, they know what you're talking about and you can answer any questions that they have. So I'm going to give you a little history tour here as quickly as I can, but to give you a little understanding of what happened here. And to do so, I need you to explain what the Voting Rights Act was and how it applies to Arizona. So in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was a culmination of the Civil Rights Movement. It was really the crowning achievement, in my opinion, for this country. It was when we were saying, this is what America is all about, giving everyone the equal right to what is inherently theirs in this country. Everyone, no matter who they are, race, creed, ethnicity, religion, and now more recently sexual orientation, everyone has the same right in equal proportion. And that's the right to vote. So that's what the Voting Rights Act of 65 was about. And when that came about, 7 states were immediately placed under federal oversight, federal pre-clearance, as we call it, for their voting laws. Everything that had to do with elections or could possibly impact elections had to be pre-cleared by the Justice Department. Now, each of those 7 states were members of the former Confederacy. You can understand why in 1965, by the Civil Rights Movement, they were included, but they weren't alone. Because within 7 years, 2 more states were added because they had discriminatory impact or intent of their elections. There was one more state in between. Texas was added shortly thereafter, also a former Confederate state. So there's 2 new states that took another 7 years to add. The first one was because they had discriminatory impact. There was something that was wrong in terms of they weren't necessarily intending to discriminate, but it was what they were doing and how it was applied. That was Alaska. Anyone want to guess on who the final state was in that group?
Arizona.
You say that with such pride. Such pride.
We know our voting history.
Right? The black eye on this state started back then, right?
We were Confederate state once too, that's the problem.
Oh, half the state. We fight for both sides. Catch or peek past the battle. I know my Arizona history now. So, Arizona was added. But Arizona, unlike Alaska, it wasn't because of impact. No. It was intentional discrimination here. Intentional. So, I'm going to skip forward from the early 70s when Arizona was placed under the Voting Rights Act to 1986, so you see why it was intentional. In 1986, U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice Warren Burger announced his retirement. And it was up to the sitting president, at that time Ronald Reagan, to pick his replacement to be Chief Justice. And rather than picking someone from outside the court, which occasionally happens, which is essentially what happened with John Roberts, he picks one of the associate justices of the Supreme Court. And Reagan picked an associate justice who was a celebrity attorney turned pro tem judge who in the early 70s was appointed by Richard Nixon to the court. And that judge, and that then justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, came from our fair state of Arizona, William H. Rehnquist. The thing about him and what relates to the Voting Rights Act is what came out in his 1986 nomination for Chief Justice that was barely touched on when he was nominated for the Supreme Court in the early 70s, which was when Arizona was placed under the Voting Rights Act pre-clearance. And what came out in 86 and was very controversial in his confirmation hearings is that in the 60s, in the early 60s in Arizona, William Rehnquist was one of the founders and leaders of what they called the Republican Gang of Nine. This was a group of prominent attorneys who organized a program statewide, but focused in Maricopa County in places of South, Central, and Western Phoenix, places where the average income was a third the national average. Low income. And in those areas, they went through the poll rosters, the polling rolls of voters, cycle after cycle, in the 60s. And if your name was not Anglican, if it was Ramirez, Wang, a Native American name, Ho, they said that you were ineligible to vote. They challenged the vote simply because of a person's national origin or ethnic background. We call that intent, right? Intentional discrimination. Then they went around on election day and they went polling site to polling site in person. They didn't have the 75-foot limit in those days. You could go in there, and they challenged and raised a hullabaloo when somebody went to vote if their skin color wasn't as light as mine. That's intentional discrimination. And William H. Rehnquist was the leader of this program. William H. Rehnquist, who later became the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. So this is why Arizona, if you can imagine a celebrity judge doing this, you can imagine how widespread this was in the state. This is why Arizona was placed under federal pre-clearance for the Voting Rights Act. Now, let's skip ahead to 2010. Let's move east to Alabama, where a county, Shelby County, home of Birmingham, which had something to do with the Civil Rights Movement. Shelby County went to court and said, you know what? We are tired of having to go to the federal government and the Justice Department for federal pre-clearance of everything having to do with our elections. Because it is a burden on us. It's expensive for all these lawyers. And we've cleaned up our act. There is no more discrimination in Shelby County, Alabama. So that's what they said. They went to court, and I just heard what some of you did. You laughed. That is precisely what that district court judge did in Alabama. He laughed. He said, no, I've been in Alabama a while. I know that we still have some problems here. Not everything is kosher. I'm saying that in honor of Rosh Hashanah today. My rabbi is going to kill me for being here, but I'm happy to be with you folks. Something is not right here in Alabama. And no, you haven't met your burden your legal burden of showing that the burden of going to the federal government to have everything with your elections pre-approved, you haven't met your burden, so no, you lose this suit. Well, what's funny to me as a 2-decade election lawyer, voting rights lawyer, one who works for free a lot, but I know that people that go to court and argue these things, they don't get paid zero, they get paid money. Shelby County, Alabama, which claimed that they were broke and didn't have money to keep going to the federal government for pre-clearance on their elections, all of a sudden they came up with money for appellate lawyers. A whole slew of them. They went into federal federal circuit court on appeal. And the circuit court did the same thing. No, Shelby County, you haven't met your legal burden of overcoming this. And then they came up with legal fees again. They petitioned by cert to the U.S. Supreme Court, which takes very few cases per term, but took this one. And in a 5-4 decision, you can guess who were the 5 and who were the 4, in 2013, U.S. Supreme Court, in the case Shelby County v. Holder, said that those jurisdictions like Shelby County that are using data from the 1980s to show that there was any discriminatory intent or impact, that use of old data is unconstitutional. Now, what they did not say is that there was no discrimination. They did not say that the Voting Rights Act is unconstitutional. They did not say that your laws of the various states and counties are unconstitutional. They said the data is too old. I'm going through this explanation of Alabama to explain what it means here in Arizona. because it applied to every single state. Their data was too old. Not just those 10 states, there were 6 more states later added, and some counties. 2 boroughs in New York City were later placed under federal preclearance. Some counties in California and the Midwest. Discrimination is all over the place, intentional or by impact. But we focus on those original 10 states because they had a long-term history and cycle after cycle of doing this. It takes a while to cure them. So what happened? You have to look to 2014, right? The next federal election? Well, 2014, all those pre-clearance states had already gotten pre-cleared what they were going to do for 2014 based on the 2013 decision. So you can't really look to 2014. You have to skip ahead to the next federal election to see what impact this Supreme Court decision would have. It's 2016. Anybody know anything important that might have happened in 2016? Anything that might have changed the course of history? Made America great again? Anybody have an idea? Right? Okay. 2016. Anybody want to guess what the first major test of a jurisdiction formerly under federal oversight by the Justice Department under the Voting Rights Act, when they are left to their own devices to come up with their election laws, the first major population center that was affected by that in 2016. Anybody want to guess? You're getting so specific on this, so you getting paid for that. Maricopa, well, okay, she's not paid on the payroll. Maricopa County, it's a whole state of Arizona. Specifically, Maricopa County was the worst black eye for Arizona and for this country and how we run elections. This is what happened as a direct result of the lack of federal control or oversight over our elections. We were left to our own devices. So, the state legislature, in their wisdom, said that, okay, we're taxed too much in this state. We've been saying that for years. We're going to show how this can be done. We're going to penny pinch the counties. So the counties will see how they can get by with less, and then in the future we can roll back our taxes. That was item number 1, that in ancient history, 2012, would have come up under federal oversight review because it might possibly impact elections. But it no longer did because Paragraph 4B of the Voting Rights Act was held to be null and void if your data was too old. So it then goes to the counties. In Maricopa County, our elections are first run by our County Board of Supervisors. They come up with the budget. So item number 2, the County Board of Supervisors, in its wisdom, said that, you know what, we only do elections a few times during our budget cycle. Let's cut back the amount of money that we are spending on elections, and that way we still have the same amount to spend on everything else that we're running. That's item number 2. That used to have federal oversight as long ancient history ago as 2012. No longer did. Item number 3, in Maricopa County, the elections are run themselves by the recorder. You guys have a fairly popular county recorder here. Our county recorder at that time had been there for 28 years. She came up with a brilliant idea. This is what we're going to do with less money to spend on elections. Well, we'll just reduce the number of polling sites. From 270 in 2012 to 60. To 60. And I remind you, Maricopa County is the 4th most populous county in the country. The 4th highest population in the country. The 10th largest geographic size county in the country. We're going to reduce 270 sites to 60. We're going to make it easier though, and this I like, in theory. People can vote at any one of those 60. They don't have to go in and assign one. Some counties in Arizona do that. Maricopa County is home to the 5th most populous city in the country. You know, it's a big city. It's hard to reduce that. You can go to any one of those sites though. That makes it more convenient, right? Unless you rely on public transit. Unless you earn less than $20,000 a year, work 2 part-time jobs, you can't afford to hire a babysitter or a nanny or somebody else to watch your kids or take care of your other things while you go and wait in line for hours on end. 2012 wasn't so brilliant either. It was an average over 1 hour per voter to wait in line in Maricopa County in 2012, and now we're reducing the sites from 270 to 60. Okay, so that's a third thing that would have required federal oversight, but didn't, because the law wasn't there. Fourth thing happened that didn't make the news. I'm the one who was handling it for Maricopa County because I'm the election integrity chair, and we knew what was going to happen. Everybody knew. The parties knew what was going to happen because of the reduction of polling sites. The election officials certainly knew. The Secretary of State touted the plan ahead of time, said this will make the voter experience better. That's your Secretary of State. So we all knew this, but on election day, there was a shooting in Southwest Phoenix. It was a mile away from the polling site. The police cordoned off a 1.5 radius around that site for 3.5 hours. So I called the county recorder and asked her to, instead of making people where they had to get in line by 7 o'clock, and once you're in line you can vote however long it takes, but instead of making it 7 o'clock, give 3.5 more hours for people to get back in line. These are people that work 2 jobs, people that rely on public transit. Her answer was no. It's up to one person. You're one person, one vote. This is one person making hundreds of thousands of voters' decisions. I said, okay, Helen, how about 1 hour? 8 o'clock. It gives a compromise here. It shows that you're respecting that. She said no. Now, in the old days, 2012, I would have been able to send one of our attorneys to court asking for an emergency injunction. But when you go to court, Anne will tell you this, she was a lawyer, when you go to court, you have to cite something. You cite a statute, a law. But the Voting Rights Act, that law, paragraph 4B, no longer applied to Arizona because our data was too old. That was item number 4. So, I want to take the Supreme Court at their word. They didn't say anything was unconstitutional. They didn't say there's no discrimination. They said the data is too old. And our responsibility now, here in Arizona, because if we don't come to our own aid and protect democracy here, nobody's going to do it for us. We've got to stand up for ourselves this cycle. It's a simple request. We need people to collect the data. And the data that the Supreme Court said they didn't have, is from those poll observers in all the states, in all the counties, just like Arizona, that was recent, saying if something is going wrong inside the voting sites on the day of election, that's not up to code. It's a very simple thing. Many of you may have served as poll observers before. You sit there and twiddle your thumbs for half a day because there's no discrimination and nothing goes wrong with elections, right? But if something does, you write it down, you report it, the data goes back to your county recorder, to your county party, who sends it on to the county recorder's office, and that way the data is collected. The reason that the Supreme Court didn't have recent data is that this topic of voting rights, of elections, of your vote, this topic was really brushed aside nationwide for decades. When I went to practice, I killed my parents very slowly when I went into election law, because it doesn't pay, right? And then I'm an actor on the side of it. They nearly killed over when I told them that. This was an underfunded, unpaid attention to field, voting rights. And now all of a sudden it's hot because we understand that there's problems going on. But to get the data that was collected by these county recorders is missing nationwide. Missing. Our county recorder in Maricopa County is still uncovering boxes of things that were unopened. There, registration slips. Tens of thousands of registration slips unopened. That's why there was a predominance, in large part, of provisional ballots being given out in Maricopa County, because those people said they were registered and they didn't appear on the voting rolls. So we need poll observers, and we're doing this now in 2017. I can speak for my county. We need 1,500 on the Democratic side. I hope the Republican side is doing the same, because this is not a partisan issue. This is an American issue to make sure everyone's voting. I'm not sure of the number in Coconino County, but we have to do this now. Because, kind of akin to what Sue was talking about, other people watching, and what John here was talking about, what other people are watching, what's happening here in Arizona. If we can demonstrate that we can look after ourselves, and that we have this army that's willing to stand up for voting rights here, if we can do that now in 2017, my voting rights attorney colleagues around the country, voting rights organizations will pay attention and hopefully, I can't promise, hopefully come to our aid in 2018 to monitor what's going on here in Arizona. That would be a good thing. But we can't do it without your help. So it's a very simple request. And I'm collecting it, again, Democratic Party and Republican Party. I know everyone here, I believe, is Democrat. Maybe there's independents stuck in the middle here. It's okay, we welcome you. Yeah, hold on a second. We need people to sign up to be poll observers in your county. And I'm going to give you a website to get this message out as well. You can go to azelectionprotection.org and people sign up. We will give the information to your county party. If you're not a Democrat, the group will pass it along to the Republican Party because we need everyone to participate in this. So that's the request. Become a poll observer. You'll get an hour training. And we need to do this now. I can tell you, the more people that we sign up, we have hundreds of people that have signed up already in the last few months, so it's great.
What was that website again?
azelectionprotection.org. Yes, ma'am.
I don't understand why it's narrative data we're looking for and not hard data. I don't understand why you can't go to the computers and print a very obvious fact that Latinos are having fewer options to vote versus the Scottsdale group that's so successful. I don't understand why the data has to be narrative and not literal.
Well, it is literal. It is actual factual data, and it's hard data. First off, the weight of evidence in court goes to people who are sworn officers in some way, have taken a note. People that go inside the 75-foot limit and are certified to go in are for that day under oath that what they're taking there. So it's greater weight of evidence what's inside the 75-foot limit and can be observed than outside. So the outside observers are great that are outside the 75-foot limit, but it's greater to have as a weight of evidence. Now, evidence from the data that's in the county recorder's office of registered voters, of everything, that's part of it too. But there's been corruptions to that data. Maricopa County, we had 70,000 voters whose voting registration was changed from their party one to another, who went and they, because of their driver's license, they went to the MVD to get their driver's license updated. They didn't check a box that said, re-registering because they figured they're already registered. Well, they got deregistered for a particular party. It mattered for that election. So there's problems with the data that's already in the system for the county, for Maricopa County and for other counties. Now, governments and courts look at that data too. The Justice Department looks at it. The courts look at that data, but they need the other data that's day of to say, hey, someone was turned away and given a provisional ballot inappropriately. That's data, and that adds up the more records that you have on site to prove numbers. That's hard data. It just needs to be compiled by the county recorders. They need to buy into it around the country, but particularly here in Arizona. Ann?
One of the issues that our county recorder has in getting people to work the polls is that you have to be there all day and into the night. And show up at 4 a.m. or something like that. But the people you're talking about can work in shifts. Is that right?
Correct. So there's two different things. Poll workers are empowered by the county recorders. They're the people that are hired to, you check in. There's a Democrat or Republican, you pick up your ballot, turn in your ballot. Those are poll workers. That's an essential function. They're needed, it's by county rule. In this county, in Maricopa County, it's full day shifts. Some other counties, it's half day shifts. Poll observers are unpaid volunteers that are working, that are sitting just watching the process happen, taking notes. In fact, you're not allowed to talk to anybody except for the inspector in that site. You can't talk to a voter, can't talk to any of the other workers. So we're trying to, so in Maricopa County, it's 1,500, we imagine, because we think there's gonna be 750 or so polling sites, and we want people to have half a day, and we want to fill every single one of them. I hope we can get there. It's been a fraction in the past. Yes?
What about the repeal of the Voter Rights Act? How does that affect collecting this data and having anything done with it?
Well, the Voting Rights Act itself is very much still alive. It's still the law of the land. The problem is how do you implement it? What happened with that Shelby County v. Holder decision, that Alabama decision that affected Arizona and all the other jurisdictions.
It's the age of the data.
It was the age of the data, but it applied because the enforcement mechanism, that was paragraph 4B of the Voting Rights Act, which said that, hey, if you've been a bad jurisdiction, we're going to hold you under the Voting Rights Act. Paragraph 5 is what gives the federal government oversight. Actually says we can send marshals if it gets to that point, that we have to go to the Justice Department. So that's how the impact of the Voting Rights Act itself is still a useful tool. The problem is, you either have to get buy-in from all these jurisdictions to be doing this, that used to be under federal oversight, to be doing this, or you need a groundswell from the public to insist on doing it or doing it themselves and collecting it, or you need Congress, and we know Congress cares a lot about voters these days. So it's not going to happen. And let me just give one more example. I'll come to you. One more example of another state what happened since the Voting Rights Act was disempowered by that Supreme Court decision. I was in Georgia, as part of my law practice, I was in Georgia for the June 2016 congressional runoff election, that special runoff, 17, excuse me, this year, yeah, it's just, this is Trump. June 2017 congressional runoff election. John Ossoff was our candidate. Okay, state of Georgia, that was one of the original 7 states under the Voting Rights Act. State of Georgia is a new and changing South. Of all those southern states, that's most. And this district, congressional district, was in suburban Alabama. Changing South. Following Shelby County v. Holder, they changed their law in Georgia. The statute changed. They are now allowed armed officers of the law inside the polling locations, in the doorway to the polling locations. This is the new and changing South. It was before my time, but I know that in the not too distant history, armed officers of the law block people's right to vote. They block people's right to public school education by standing in the doorways. That's what they have now empowered. So I got there. I am monitoring DeKalb County. It's a suburban county, a large African American population, and to be fair, an African American sheriff and a largely African American police department. But there are armed guards standing in the doorway, standing where you pick up your ballot, standing where you turn in your ballot. It's a card there, a voter card. That to me, as someone who's been doing this for a few decades, who teaches this subject, who's been preaching about this subject, that's classic intimidation. Even if it's not intentional, that's the impact of that. I got them to move, you actually messaged me back that day. I got them to move where they were standing at every location that I could personally see. But I had to snap a picture and send it to them to show them. That's what happens without the Voting Rights Act being active because the data is too old.
How old is too old? I've got to go, but how old is too old?
Yep. We're going to take questions from the other two as well. The speakers here, they have a lot to talk about.
I have to leave. I was just.
I'll follow you out. I'll follow you out.
He's a stalker.
Sorry.
Come back, we have any questions?
Yeah, no worries.
Go ahead and see if they've got.
Okay.
Do you want to ask questions of our other 2 speakers? We
Yes.
just wanted to give you a chance
We wanted to cut things off. Sure, go ahead.
It might be a stupid question, I apologize, there are stupid questions.
No, I won't say so.
Okay, in 08, I went to New Mexico to help the Obama.
Yes.
Because the Obama group had figured out that New Mexico had been lost to Kerry by 50 votes.
Okay.
So they built their own database. They did everything so that the Obama administration knew who hadn't voted, who could vote, and they sent us out to places to tell people you really need to vote. Even though you think he's got it sewn up, Hillary, you need to go vote.
That's triggering.
And my concern is, or what I want to say to you is, I appreciate that you're looking at the data every day, but I think you need to share the data. I think people need to know. It's shocking to me and appalling to me that the representative we have from this area is so horrible. And I think I've asked different Democrats in this room, how did he get elected? Was it Navajo County? What happened? And I think I pretty much got a feedback that, well, a lot of Democrats in Flagstaff just didn't go vote.
And they
We were
don't
like,
vote down ballot. That was what I was saying to you. We don't vote down ballot. We vote for Hillary or whoever for president,
okay.
but we don't go all the
So
way
we
down
need
to
to go to people and
OP6.
say you need, so we know we have a message we have to send, so we need the data
Right.
and the specific statements, who we go to and what to tell them to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know, we all talk to college students, I'm sure, who had read the Facebook and didn't trust Hillary, and you'd say, why don't you trust Hillary? Oh, she's just not honest. Give me an example. Oh, we had an example. You know, we've seen it on Facebook, so we know, and they voted for God only knows who. So I guess what I'm asking for you is, can you get us data too, as well as, good rah-rahs, we're going to feel good.
The problem is there's so much data, I can zero it in. There's a couple things I can tell you. A Democrat in Arizona running statewide needs to make 170,000 votes out of thin air. Now, by thin air, I mean field work and all the other things that campaigns do. But a generic Democrat starts about 180,000 votes down. If Democrats voted at the same rate as Republicans, that's 56,000 votes. So that's 56,000, that's about 1/3 of our vote deficit gone if we do our turnout work.
So we need to get 56,000 more, is that what you're saying?
So if
That we got?
Democrats vote at this margin and Republicans vote at this margin,
Right.
if we bring that up, that's automatically 56,000 new votes because we've got more Democrats.
You can send us the names of Democrats we can go out and talk to.
That's exactly, so yeah, that's the function of what
PCs get that.
PCs get that. That's what Vote Builder does for you. That's part of the training that when I'm talking about developing more training tools, it's kind of demystifying what all this is. It makes sense in my brain, but I've done this for a lot of years and I stare at it every day. So demystifying what all this is, explaining why this is important, and the sort of path to victory. I have by legislative district sort of the numbers and the breakdown, and you can talk to me after I'll give you my card and I can send it to you. But the real answer here is there's a couple ways Democrats win. We get Democrats to vote more. Independents who lean our way by 3 to 7 points on average, they trail by about 20 percentage points in turnout. So if we identify, which we can use Vote Builder to do, the independents that are on our side, we can get them out to vote too and significantly more get into that vote deficit, and then we register more voters. That's the nuts and bolts.
I have a question. I'm a board member of the Northern Arizona Dream Fund, and in that capacity, we fund the Dreamers through getting them documents. But it also gave me entry into the Hispanic community. And so my question is this. That is, to me, a semi-sweeping giant in the state of Arizona in terms of the demographics. And also, I noticed in the past election, it's totally underrepresented in terms of the voting. How much is the Arizona Democratic Party willing to shift its resources into a brown neighborhood, precinct by precinct, brown work? Because it takes resources in terms of tapping that community.
2 answers to that. 1, you're correct. We on our own and with partners every day work to register and turn out Latino voters. They are the sleeping giant. That is why Arizona is seen as this state that's the next state to turn blue. That's why people in DC return my calls at the speed that they do, because they're excited, just like I think a lot of us are, at the potential that we have in this state. So the first point there is you're correct. The second point there is that investing in local parties to do that outreach to whatever community is important within a certain county or an LD is why the Democratic Party wants to continue to push towards a more member services driven apparatus. We want to continue to provide more resources for local party organizations, because I could sit up here and act like there's probably, I'm ballparking, how many precincts are in Arizona? like 3,000, 4,000, thousands upon thousands. I could act like the state party as a state party driven model could lead a precinct by precinct driven strategy. I would be lying to you. The amount of resources that takes at a state party level is astronomical. We don't have that, the DNC doesn't have that. I'm not even sure Hillary Clinton's campaign had enough money to really dive into new precinct by precinct. So what we need to do and what we're focusing on is providing the resources to someone like you who maybe you can take in your precinct. And if we provide the resources to people, sort of a teach a man to fish mentality, we can, as a team, because we're Democrats, we win when we work together. We don't have the big money Koch brothers coming in to save us on election day. If we can have different people taking control of their own precinct, that's the more sustainable long-term approach towards what you're doing.
I gotta tell you, I live in the Great White North of North Scottsdale. I live in LD 23. We have an amazing chair. His name is Brian Neely. There is a woman named Joan James. Joan James was the chair. She is like everybody's grandmother. If Joan James takes you out for coffee, you're a dead man. She will give you a list of 100 people in your precinct, and you have to call them and make sure that you get a hold of them. And every time I see her at a meeting, I feel guilty if I haven't completed. It's not like she comes up to me and hounds me. It's just that I know that that's her expectation. She doesn't. It's just that look on her face. And if you can find one person in every precinct to be a Joan James, if we could clone her, we would turn this state blue. Just because this is your grandmother. So if you can find somebody, ID somebody in each precinct to be a Joan James, it's 50% plus one. That's all we need. We are going to have LD 23. We're going to have the database so buttoned down and so cleaned up. It's a piece of cake, and that's what we need. Just go through the database, get the van cleaned up, and then be able to know whose doors we're knocking on and who's voting and who isn't.
But I just want to follow up.
Yes.
In terms of those barrio, those Hispanic precincts, are there elected precinct committee people? Because looking at the past data, these are really, it's almost a vacuum. Many of these.
Dave, come to our PC meetings on every month and we'll figure that out.
Actually, I'm not worried. No, I'm not worried. Personally, I'm not worried about Coconino County. I think we're activists. I think we lead the state. We've always led the state in terms of our turnout. And I don't say we don't have problems. But in that capacity, I'm going down to southern Arizona, Maricopa County, Pima County, and some of the larger Hispanic communities. That's what I'm talking about. I think we know who we are here in Coconino and what our marching orders are here. There's no doubt about it. As a precinct committee, I did count it. But I'm asking you in terms of the state organization.
So I'll say a couple things there. In Maricopa County, they have maybe doubled in the last year their amount of PCs.
More than triple.
This isn't an overnight task. That's as true as can be. They are gaining ground. The areas where we lack PCs are the hardest areas to organize. There's someone working 2 jobs, someone who doesn't have time to volunteer. So there's a couple paths there. One is, yes, PCs are great. But if that's not possible, we want to make sure that our staff focus in an election year, and not 3 months before the election, but 6, 9, 12 months before the election, is organizing in those communities. That's when I talk about a local hiring plan. I want to make sure that we're hiring that kid fresh out of college from South Phoenix who just got inspired by this past election. They're going to go neighbor to neighbor, door to door, and organize in their local community. Because I'm pretty lily white. I don't really carry a lot of credence in South Phoenix, but someone organizing in their local community definitely does. And so that's one thing we're focusing on. Again, it's not something that's ever finished, and it's a recurring battle because you gain some ground, then you lose some ground. But it's something that's really important, and it's something we're going to go here and here.
So the other sleeping giant, you mentioned it, more independents registered than anyone else. Clearly the Democratic Party is going to be thinking about that, and I will address that. What that means,
Yes.
I'd like to hear as much as you're willing to say and talk about that.
It's difficult to target because when you, I know that we did for, I think Penn Zone's race, because a lot of those independents had been ID'd before when he ran. The question is, how do you allocate resources when you're trying to reach out to all the Ds on your lists? How do you take that focus away to start IDing the independents? And I don't know what the plans are to be able to do that. Personally, like I said, I'm not a field person. My background is finance. I'm not calling a whole bunch of independents to try to get money from them. I don't know what the plan is for that.
I do.
Okay.
So he's gonna help me raise money.
I can raise money to do it.
It's a tag team effort here. So a couple things there. Independents who are not on Pebble and who did not vote in 2016 are 57. Our average party score for them, how many of them we think are Democrats, is 57%. That's Pebble. Sure, yes. So independents who are not on our permanent absentee list, independents who don't get a ballot in the mail every time like clockwork, and they didn't vote in 2016 because most who aren't on Pebble do not vote. They are 57% Democrat, depending on if you believe our data. I happen to. That's just me. So a huge area of tremendously low-hanging fruit for independents is we know which of the independents are our independents. We have the micro-targeting data to tell us that. So a huge part of our field program going into next year will be getting those independents on the permanent absentee list. Because when they're not on, they voted about 40%. When they are on, they voted about 70%. That seems like pretty much a done deal to me. And so there's many, many more parts of that plan. You're absolutely correct that independence is either the largest or close to the largest voting bloc in the state. Tremendously important. We gotta find who ours are, and we know that data, and we gotta go talk.
Okay, and he and I just sat through a meeting last Saturday, and what we find is that the issues are not, as we know them, healthcare, gun control, whatever we consider our democratic issues, are not the thing that is driving them, but it is systemic reform of the system. And you will address this when I ask you. Is this not the only issue that they're mainly interested in as independents? So when we go to them with healthcare or all these other issues, they're kind of only passed. But if we go at them with reform, is this what they're going to hear?
Yeah, they feel they've been left behind by the two parties, and so they're looking for a reform in the primary system. To say, I want to vote the person, I don't want to vote the party. So that's what you've got to deal with.
Sure, and so a large part of what the party will focus on, and then I'll get to the next couple questions here, is we exist to turn out the supporters that we know are going to vote for Democrats. We're going to leave it to the individual campaigns to convince Republicans why they should turn away and vote for them and persuade them. As the party, we have a central, singular focus to turn out people who vote for Democrats, because that helps everyone from dog catching. And so we're going to identify the ones that lean our way. And they might be motivated by reforming the party system. They might be motivated still by healthcare. But we're going to know that these are people who likely are going to vote our way. That's what our modeling and our data will tell us. And so the main thing is going to a voter and telling them your personal story. Again and again, what you hear is why you are passionate about democratic politics. If you impart that upon them, that is the longest lasting effect that a single conversation will put.
One other thing before we move on. I work a lot with the Women's Leadership Forum, which is part of the DNC, which was started in 1993 by Hillary and Tipper. One of the groups that we're focused on, and up here in Flagstaff, it's important, is the millennials. There's 75 million millennials, and just like independents, they're looking at issues, not institutions. And trying to figure out how to motivate them is the same big nut that we're trying to figure out at this point as well.
So I want to get on to some more, and I'll stay around if you want to talk to me after. I have the whole day in Flagstaff, beautiful Flagstaff. So.
Yeah, back to that New Mexico gig.
Sure.
We're in New Mexico, and there are people there from San Francisco who are there.
Sure.
Because they knew San Francisco was going to be voting for Barack Obama. So my question is there any reason as a statewide group we aren't saying to people in Flagstaff, we could use you down in Maricopa County and walk around door to door, because we don't need to do it here, or people in Tucson.
So to some degree, so in 2016 we had an out-of-state volunteer operation. We were getting buses of union workers from California coming here. It was fantastic. If there's ever a point when there's no more votes to be won in a certain area, I'll be shocked.
Yeah.
So the nuts and bolts of it is it's probably more effective if you stay here, knock doors close to around here. If anything, go to the nation, not there. We do like to move people around. It won't be probably from here to like South Phoenix, because there's probably easier areas like Scottsdale, South Phoenix. That's a much shorter drive, but we can move capacity around. That's all just kind of like moving.
If you do that kind of data getting here, you're going to be doing that.
We'll try to. Sometimes it just causes more problems than you try to solve. But yeah.
I'm curious, I was interested in what you were saying about the independents as far as their interest in reform. Reform is a very vague, huge.
They're not vague about it, it's the primary system.
They want
And the various
California.
models
Primary
for, yeah, we feel that
want an
it's
open
being
primary?
polarized by our existing primary system.
So
The-
they
the
want an
independent voters, if you register as an independent, you're disenfranchised early in the game.
Oh, so they want, but they don't want the same primary that we've got in California where it doesn't matter, you can get,
We
because
want,
we'd end up having all
I
the.
say
Republicans
we, I'm a
run.
registered Democrat,
Well,
but,
you understand what I
I'm
mean.
thinking, as an independent these
They're
days.
not talking about
We
that.
want to look at models and see what might work for Arizona.
On open
You
primary.
realize that the direct primary was considered a reform back in the turn of the century, the progressive movement. And so that was a reform over the conventions, where it was people like us sitting down and choosing our candidate. Nobody else even had a word in it. So the direct primary, but what we've learned, I'm a political scientist, data show you that what it has done is polarize the parties. Each party has become polarized. The only people who vote in the primaries are the most extreme, I use that advisedly, but the most avid Republicans and the most avid Democrats are the ones who will take the time to vote in the primary. Well, that drives the party further and further away, and you've got to find some mechanism to pull more moderates to the polls or something like that, and that's the kind of reform we're searching for. No one had, I don't agree with the answers that some people have, but I don't have a good answer. But that's what we need to find, is some way to keep people from polarizing, because that's who goes to the polls to vote in primaries, by definition.
Did I see one back here? Yeah, you've been waiting, sorry, go ahead.
I think half the battle is getting resources to go out and talk to people.
Sure.
The other half is what do you say?
Sure.
I think the problem the Democrats have is they don't know how to say it right. For example, the Affordable Care Act was positioned as a product that you buy, that's sold that you buy. It wasn't positioned as a right, like Bernie talked about. But if it had been positioned as a right, I think the whole argument would be different. So I think we need to know, in turn, to the side, how to talk about these issues with Democrats and independents to get them excited about the issues that people actually vote. So it's not just enough to go to their door and knock on the door and say hi. You have to have something to say that will make a difference when you talk to them.
I agree, absolutely.
Where are you going to help them do that? How do you help them?
So I think the important part to consider there is that in each community there's different issues that are prevalent. What's prevalent here, jobs might be universal, healthcare might be universal in some cases, but each community has different issues that are important to them. So part of that is we need to make sure we're organizing at a local level. We need to make sure that whatever operation we run in Coconino County is led by Coconino County people, Coconino County staff that we've hired, and Coconino County volunteers, and in coordination with the Coconino County Party. Because the best way to talk about issues, I think you're right. Personally, I feel like Democrats aren't as good at messaging as Republicans are. I think part of that is a lot harder to be for something, which we often are, than against something, which Republicans often are. That's my personal opinion. But to the meat of your point is how do we message more effectively? I'll kind of go back to the answer I told this gentleman. I think I'm a political scientist. I'm really not. I just like to read a lot. Everything that I've ever read about turnout effects and how you make people vote at a higher rate is if you go to someone and tell them why you are passionate to be a Democrat and why you are passionate to vote, it is a humanizing connection, and that is the single biggest impact you can have on a voter. A person-to-person conversation here or at their door or at the farmer's market, anywhere, about why it's important for you, that you personally vote, why you make a plan, how you vote, and why you vote for Democrats. And when you passionately tell someone what's important to you, because you can probably do a message about why healthcare or whatever is important to you a lot better than a national Democratic message, that's what moves the needle. Because it takes politics from up here, out in the national sphere, into the local.
I think we need help with this, okay? Because I'm not good at that.
Happy to help.
But I need to hear that. Get more of that. Are you familiar with the Operating George Blackhawk?
Of course, yes. The political brain, something like that.
So we need more of what he's got to say. Spread out so more people are familiar with that.
So this kind of goes, and I'll come to you, sir. This kind of goes to the crux of an issue that I see in party organizations, is that we often silo information. We often don't effectively get information out to the community at large. That's one of those reasons why I want to reform our training process at the party. A lot of the things I just talked about will be a central part of the training materials that we're rolling out to people. So if you want to pick and choose different parts of running a campaign, what is an effective message at the doors? We can give you a short 3-minute video that says what I just said in a more concise way and perhaps more persuasive, and gives you that information, because we need to be doing a better job of training people who are doing this work day in, day out in their local communities. And so I think it's fantastic that you think that. Thank you for telling me that, because that's helpful for me to know, and it's something we're working on, and we hope to roll it out in the next couple of weeks here.
Let me, I hope to address your issue. I'm a lifetime Democrat. I'm also an academic, which is a course. As a sociologist, so I crunch numbers and all of that. However, I was also a coordinator of the Bernie Sanders campaign in Northern Arizona. And we took Northern Arizona in terms of being elected as a delegate there, and I went back to Philadelphia. But I want to address your issue that all I did, I threw out everything. I didn't go on a script of why I'm for Bernie. I just spoke from the heart. In terms of 3 separate issues in terms of wages, and we know the Bernie talking points. But I spoke from the heart, and we registered more voters that were independent. In fact, many of them were not registered to vote, they were independent, but they caught fire. Our biggest problem was converting them to vote Democratic in the primary. We had to convince them that Bernie Sanders, if you want to vote for him, you have to register as a Democrat in order to vote for him. And that was a hard point. But the enthusiasm and speaking from the heart, I threw everything out from my previous 30 years of scripted training, and just spoke from the heart in terms of what my fire in the belly was, my anger, or and that carried the day. I didn't need a script, and I kind of voiced it. Each individual's different.
I agree. I think if you read from a script,
I need your
you have to speak with your authentic voice. My sister is 40 years old and had never been involved in politics before. She's got 3 little kids, and all of a sudden she realized what was at stake. And she came to a phone bank with me in New Jersey and was like, what do I do? And I said, just get on the phone. And she was on the phone, and all of a sudden she started talking about her kids and education. And the person next to me was like, I thought you said she had never done this before, and she didn't. But she realized from her heart what was at stake, and it was just so easy. I was in New Hampshire with a retired admiral, 2 retired admirals, and a retired general from the Marine Corps. We go up to this door, and it was Super Bowl Sunday before the games had started, and they started talking to this guy who was standing there in his pajamas, and the guy was like inviting them in, but they didn't know what to say either. They had never done this before. They had just recently retired. But they thought it was going to be impossible. These were guys who were in Vietnam. These were guys who had faced life and death situations. Once you start talking from your heart, it's easy. The phone banks that I had done at the Arizona Democratic Party, we did ladies' night on Wednesdays. You pull a list that has women. You can specifically nail it, target it down, and it's easy to talk to them. It's like a single mom with kids in her home. Once you figure out who you're talking to, it becomes a lot easier. So you can target it really specifically. The messaging then becomes important, but I think if people will read the script once, and you might hate this, but then you throw the script out. And then you realize this is really, you know what you want to say, you know how you're going to say it to them. Speak from your heart, and it'll be easy.
But something that he's talking about, though, is the language we use. Another issue is, for example, they refer to the Social Security as this entitlement when it's an earned benefit. I mean, there's language that we're using that defeats our goal. The language of Obamacare, and I adored Obama, but as soon as they put his name on that, it just darkened the whole issue for so many people. And it really should have been Affordable Care Act and made the point, and that's one of the things I think he's talking about. He's not talking about, I don't know what to say.
Well, that's why
we have to have language that's much better to our
That's why now they're calling it Cassidy, or Grant Cassidy care instead of Trump care, because if it's called Trump care, it's gone, right?
Yeah, but the point is, we have to use language to say importance as opposed to just our personal stories. I grant what you're saying. But
Well,
that's
it's
not
like
what he was talking
pro-life, all of a sudden they co-opted it, everybody's pro-life.
Yeah.
So I think part of that is, and I'll use you all as my eyes and ears. Next year, if you come and volunteer, you get a script that's robotic, or that makes you say certain things that you don't feel is helpful to a conversation. Call me. I'll give you all my phone number, and call me and let me know, because that's not what we want, and that's not the program we're going to run. The program we're going to run is we're going to give you a couple things. We're going to give you some parts of the script that are important. Sometimes we'll ask someone, how are you going to vote? Are you going to walk there, or are you going to drive there? That's a proven method that when someone plans out their vote, it helps them visualize and think through the vote. So there's parts of the script that are important, and we'll do our best to emphasize those. But other than that, it's about, we've said it a couple of times now, personal stories, why you are a Democrat, why you are voting. It's the most powerful connection that's made. We can do a better job on messaging on issues better. You're right, we never called the Obamacare. We just lost that messaging.
I would just like to say to the people who are here, most of you know me. I'm Ann Heitland. I'm the communications chair for the party. Kim Watson, who is one of the PC coordinators, and I had a meeting with a small group of PCs, and we had exactly this conversation, and we started to do some role playing and some messaging, and we're going to do more of that. If you would like to be part of that, let me know. Let Kim know.
And we also met earlier this morning, and have already agreed that we're going to collaborate with John and the state staff as well. So I think we're on target with what you're looking for. Great.
There's always a million things we can be doing. I said earlier, in the art of human relationships, which is all politics really is, you could do anything. There's no real wrong answer. So what I want the state party to do is offer what we know from a best practice standpoint, offer things up. If people want to use them, we think that's fantastic. If people know that something else works better in their local community, a different issue is more important in Flagstaff than it is in Tucson, that's great. That's where we defer to your local knowledge as Democrats. You're a part of this larger team. We can't do it without you. So we have to trust you that you know what you're doing, and that what you're talking about is what should be important to us as well.
You have to look at this, because my background is corporate. You have a bell curve, and I look at it from a presidential perspective. This many people at the top of the curve are paid staff. Everybody else is a volunteer. There is no business model that operates that way. Volunteers elect the leader of the free world. It's an amazing system. So without you guys, we're lost. I'm a volunteer, and I get to drive this guy around, and I get ordered around by this guy who's a paid staffer. So without you, we are lost. So anything that you ever want to tell us, call. You have my email address. You can call him. I don't know if you want to call him. But please, let us know what you need, what you want. We will do our very best.
Speaking as a woman.
Absolutely, yeah. You can order us around. But anything that you need, please. Don't ever think it's, like I said, too big or too small. Tell us. As crazy as you might think it is, we've heard worse. So just let us know.
That's true. I think with that, I see some people strolling out, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I will stick around. I'm happy to answer anyone's question. I'm happy to give my business cards out to talk to you all on the phone or come back up here pretty soon like I'm planning to do. But I want to be respectful of people's times. It's the middle of the day, so people might have things to do.
At the state committee meeting?
State committee meeting.
Prescott Valley?
Yes.
Tomorrow, you don't have to be a state committee person to attend.
Let me just turn this off.
Saturday.